Welcome to Industry Ignited, the podcast that brings real conversations with the people shaping the future of business across industrial, B2B, manufacturing, and service sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar, and today I'm honored to be joined by Austin Tenette, a senior business advisor at Transworld Business Advisors, certified executive leadership coach, and the driving force behind the Prepare to Sell coaching program. Austin is at the forefront of a massive generational shift known as the Silver Tsunami, where 11,000 Americans turn 65 every day, many of them business owners ready to retire. As a seasoned business broker and M&A advisor, he helps these owners exit at strong valuations while guiding a new wave of entrepreneurs looking to escape corporate life and build wealth through business ownership. Today, we'll dive in how to build a business that is not just successful, but truly sellable. Austin, welcome so much to the show. Thank you for being with me today.
Dr. Aguilar, it is a pleasure to be on your podcast, and thank you for the invitation. I do appreciate it.
Of course. Austin, you've had such a rich and diverse career in coaching, advising, and broadcasting. How did your path lead you to business coaching and working with Transworld?
So when I left corporate America probably about 9 years ago, I was trying to figure out what would be next. So I was looking for something that would allow me to bring in all the various experiences I had from early in my career. I'm proud to say I'm a recovering CPA, so I had some skills in the accounting and finance arena, then spent some time in strategy development. I ran a corporate strategy function, and then which led to an operations role with a major international firm, and then a couple stints in business development. So I'd done a bunch of things. So I was trying to figure out how do I pull all that together, and so that's when I landed on I acquired a franchise in the business coaching and leadership space, and that's where I spent about 6 or 7 years honing my skill sets, taking those corporate America experiences and translating those into being able to assist small business owners, and that's kind of where our paths crossed as I became an entrepreneur in residence at the local community college, and then that's again obviously where we got connected as you endeavor to offer your skills and expertise to the college as well. And then here in the later part of that journey, I expanded my coaching practice to include business brokerage. And so if you think about it, there's a lot of information out there about how to start a business, how to improve business, but there's not much information about how to exit a business. And so as in the numbers we shared at the top of the podcast, 11,000 people a day in America are turning 65 and with a desire to retire at some point. I mean, so that's what I tell business owners. One day you will exit your business. And so the secondary question is first it's when, and then the second part is how. Will you do it on your terms, or will you do it on somebody else's terms? So I'm here to help or really empower owners who are contemplating retirement to be able to exit on their terms.
Wow. Yeah, that is an astounding number of people turning 65 and entering into that retirement zone every day. Mm-hmm. And I guess, are we already into the Gen Xers who are reaching that end?
They're quickly approaching. So the other thing is, we deal not primarily. We obviously a lot of our clients are baby boomers, but we do have a fair amount of Gen Xers as well. Maybe they got an early start with entrepreneurship, and by the time they're in their kind of mid 40s, they've accomplished what they set out to do, or they've grown weary of what it is they're doing, and they'd like to move on. So they approach us, and we help them find a buyer for their business. The guy that I'm most jealous of is a gentleman, and of course, being a proud baby boomer, anybody under 45 is a kid to me, but this guy is truly a kid. He's about 29 years old. He built this fabulous business, and he's ready to move on to something else. 29 years old, and he built it in such a way that he's going to have a nice payday when he does when we help him find a buyer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as we work with entrepreneurs, I mean, one thing I always say as well is start with the end in mind. And so at some point, maybe it's way down the road, maybe it's not in, in your 20s, but 40s, 50s, 60s, you're going to want to do something else or sell your business or, what is that end strategy? And whether, like with my business, even in a marketing company, I don't have children who are interested in my business. My kids are all, off doing other things. And so I'll have to look at selling at some point. And so I'm, myself and I'm sure many other business owners are curious about what's involved in the process and what can we do to get ourselves set up to have a successful sale and get the value that we want out of our company at some point. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say today.
I'm glad you shared that, and that's one of my favorite quotes from Stephen Covey. Begin with the end in mind. And I've talked literally to hundreds of business owners over the years, and there was only one guy that sort of really had a really good idea of how he would exit his business. He was in sort of the digital marketing space, and his goal was that he was going to construct a business that he could one day sell to Google. Now, will that happen? Who knows? Because because this was, we had this conversation pre AI, so who knows what the landscape looks like now? But
Right.
The way that is so powerful, when we begin with the end in mind, it helps us to plot our strategy. And so, what is strategy? It's obviously it's the direction forward, but it's less about what we are going to do, but it's really specific about what we will not do. Because I'm sure you work with a lot of small businesses, and most small businesses suffer from the shiny new things syndrome, right? Where everything that they see looks like a opportunity, and so they've already have 10 on their plate, and they're chasing number 11 and 12 because it's shiny and new and it looks interesting, and it's got to be easier to find success in that new thing than the other 9 things that they've been working on. So I really like what this guy stood for, because he said, hey, this is what I'm building. Here's who's gonna take me out, and I'm gonna stay the path until somebody or something tells me that I can't do it. And boy, I wish we had more entrepreneurs, business owners that felt that way, or that thought that way. It doesn't commit you to that path, but it does help you sort of, again, eliminate some of the noise that we see in our respective businesses about trying to pursue too many objectives all at once.
Right. Well, it's like having a roadmap. It's having somewhere to goal or get to, having goals of how to get there. And while it may shift and change, your path may have a detour. You may end up wanting a different destination. It is somewhere to get started with, and it's a direction to stay focused on. And yes, I call what you explained earlier, getting squirreled, squirrel with all the shiny, new little.
Well put.
Squirrel.
Dr. Aguilar, may I use that in my conversations? Getting squirrel. I love that. Yes.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because the thing is, if for those of us who use these GPS-enabled mapping apps on our phone, how does that work? We plug in an address where we want to go, because we've got to have a direction, and then it may give us 2 or 3 options, and then we have to push a button and say, this is the path that I want to take, and then so guess what? We're making a commitment to that path. But then what happens invariably, particularly, we're here in Houston, there's always some sort of traffic issue. And along the way, we get a warning, hey, there's, a traffic jam, an accident, or this or that. Then we can pivot to an alternate path. But we don't start out our journey saying, well, I'm going to just go down, 7 different paths. No, we select one, and we commit to it until something, a roadblock or speed bump shows up. So I think our businesses shouldn't be much different, but boy, getting squirreled seems like it's become a core competence for some business owners out there.
Right. And without any kind of direction, we waste a lot of time and resources.
That is
You're
correct.
in the car analogy, you're gonna waste gas, and you're gonna just be driving in circles potentially because you don't have a destination or a direction. So even if it's a direction or destination that changes and shifts, at least you can put KPIs behind it as well.
Exactly.
At least you can measure and know, success points and whether you're achieving something or not. So yeah.
So it's funny you mentioned KPIs because I remember when one of my jobs in corporate America, it was I had one KPI. I ran a very large group, and I had 1,900 employees on my team, 15 managerial direct reports, and I definitely believed in KPIs, but we had one KPI, and that KPI was it was how we evaluated overtime. In our 95% of our spend or our costs had to do with labor, and so after spending a little bit of time in the business, I was able to help my managers understand that if we could keep a low overtime rate for our people, we would create exceptional profits. Because that one number, it said so many things. It meant that my managers were taking good care of their people because people weren't quitting. So this is a business that had 200% turnover in a good year, right?
Oh, wow.
So exactly. So
Yeah.
small changes add up. But
Yeah.
if our managers learn how to take better care of their people, people wouldn't quit. So it also told me that we were doing a great job because given the challenges of the industry, it also told me that if we could keep our turnover below 100%, that we were doing a really good job of attracting and retaining to some degree good quality candidates. Then it also told us that we had good command of our operations because we knew how to schedule people and move them around so that we didn't create overtime. And then there was a couple of other things that it told me as well. But from that one KPI, I was able to, I wish it was but it was we were able to build a very, very, very effective business. And we were able to increase profits 32% in 11 months. It was exceptional, and my team got national and global recognition for the job they had done in making that happen. So I'm a big proponent of KPIs. Yes.
Yeah. So KPIs and numbers are your business speaking back to you, right?
Exactly.
It's
That's
letting you
what.
know the health and how your business is doing. That's awesome. So next question, can you give us a quick snapshot of what you do day to day in your role with Transworld?
So I don't like to romanticize what we do because really what we do at the end of the day, ours is a sales business. I mean, we are constantly on the lookout, creating relationships, having conversations with people who are mostly people who are looking to or have a desire to exit the business. And then secondarily, we'll work with a group of folks who would like to sort of maybe either become entrepreneurs or accelerate their existing business by through an M&A transaction, adding something onto what they're already doing, maybe buying out a competitor, buying a complementary business, and that sort of thing. And so, even though listing is the name of the game, I believe that education is really why I've been put here into this role, is to educate business owners on what does it look like to acquire a complementary business, or what does it look like to exit a business? Because the complexities of exiting a business, it's pretty high up there when you think about how do I find potential buyers, how do I help with the financing of the transaction, on and on and on and on. In fact, I've got a good friend who wrote a book about the process, and he indicated that there's probably about 42 things you need to be aware of as you go to sell your business. And guess what? They're all good. But I'm a believer that if you focus on three areas, you're going to have that'll account for about 80% of the success of the sale of your business. And so my education is not on the 42, but more so on the three things that will most likely create success in a transaction.
And what are those three things?
Three things are number one, buyers are looking for a business. So we as sellers, we should be thinking about how do we create a business that runs independent of us, right? So let's just look at a business that everybody knows a little something about. Let's look at McDonald's, right? McDonald's is the best small business in the world because from day one, those franchisees, they are taught that that business has to run independent of themselves, right? So and they encourage owning multiple locations. So there's no way that you can run multiple locations if you are buried in the details of what's going on in your business. And so, so what is it that helps people to become create a business that's independent of themselves? It's a couple things. One, who have you empowered in your organization to make decisions and lead the team? Many people go into business because they want to be their own boss and they want to make all the decisions and so on and so forth. And so they have this stranglehold on their business that once you remove them from the business, there is no business because they may always made the decisions. They've probably have embedded themselves way too far into the operations. And so when a buyer shows up and says, well, if I buy this business and Johnny goes away, what do I have? I've got maybe some chairs, a couple of computers, and not much else. And so part of that is just obviously building a team, but it's also putting in place policies, procedures, and processes along with KPIs so that we can evaluate the business and know where we need to focus on. So that would be the number one thing, making the business run independent.
Yeah, I've heard it called key man syndrome when there's just one or a couple like very important people that you can't survive, the business can't survive without. So removing that key man syndrome.
Exactly. And so one of my favorite stories from the business broker annals is that there was a seller. His business was being sold, and he takes off on a 2-week vacation. As we're probably 3-4 weeks from closing the transaction, and everybody goes, "Well, what are you doing? This is a critical time for your business." And he says, "Hey, I want to demonstrate to the buyer that this business will run as good, if not better, if I'm not here. And what better way to demonstrate that than for me to take off at this point in time and allow the business to continue?" And it made perfect sense. The transaction closed. Both buyer and seller were very, very happy, but it was a great testament. So let's test the theory. So, and it worked out.
I love that. Yeah, that is a great idea.
Yes, exactly.
So that's the number one. And what are the other two?
And then number two is creating financial statements that accurately reflect the performance of the business. So what does that mean? So too many times I'll work with a seller and maybe they haven't done their last year or a couple years worth of tax returns. They maybe have not decided to hire a bookkeeper, or I said, you don't have to hire a bookkeeper, but it makes it simple when you have a bookkeeper, somebody that will consciously stay on top of the financial records to make sure that you have monthly financial statements, quarterly financial statements, and year-end statements, because that's what a buyer is obviously looking for. And then, of course, there's the quality of the statements. Most small businesses exist, at least in the mind of the owner, they exist to shelter themselves from taxes. And so as a result, what do we see when we kind of peel back the onion skin? We see the family members are running their personal vehicles through the organization. We're seeing homes being remodeled on and the company is paying for them, and a variety of issues like that. Now, of course, we endeavor to adjust out those, and we go back and normalize the financial statements through our as part of our process. But boy, how much simpler would it be if we just said, "Hey, look, there's more value in the enterprise if I just report things accurately, right? and then when it comes time to sell, I don't have to go through all of these gyrations of adding something back or including this, adding this, subtracting that, so on and so forth. Because I'm not the tax man, but it's amazing how many people who generate cash sales, that cash just ends up going into people's pockets, and it never gets reported. So
Right.
I'll give you a funny one. We had we've got a business under contract right now, and what had happened was my peer that was representing the seller, he said, "Hey, look, this business is not for everyone." I go, "Well, what do you mean? It's kind of a basic business." He says, "Well, the seller has manipulated the financials in such a way, basically multiple sets of books, that
Yeah.
if you're not already maybe a member of that industry or have experience maintaining, multiple sets of records, one for taxes, one for how the business is really doing." I said, you'll never get comfortable with the business. And sure enough, he told the story today. He just said, we brought multiple buyers through it, and they just couldn't get comfortable with the way that it was run. So what he did was, yeah, he put a few extra dollars in his pocket, but he shrunk the pool of potential buyers of that business because it was too much risk. If it was my first time as an entrepreneur, I'm not going to take the risk. And then, of course, because of the way that he had run his risk, you couldn't finance the business through a traditional financing source like a bank or something, something more traditional, because the bank could never get comfortable with what he had done. So what did we do? So it took about 2 years to sell, and
Yeah.
it ended up going to a buyer who kind of ran his businesses the same way, and he was able, after a lot of due diligence, he was able to get comfortable with what that seller was doing, and so he went forward. And guess what? The seller ended up he got 50% cash from the buyer, but then was forced to carry back 50% of the sales price in what we call a seller's note. So the seller had to act as the bank uh, for
Basically,
3 to 5
yeah.
years. Yeah,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
and if I'm the buyer, I'm going to ask for the same thing, because I'm going to say, "Hey, look, okay, I see what you've done here, and you telling me that everything's kosher, but I'll tell you what, I need to lower my risk, so I need you to carry the financing." Because you know what happens if things don't work out, then the buyer's going to say, "Hey, let's look at this seller note that you took back, and let's see how we can reduce it to reflect the current operations of the business." And so that's why I say number 2 is creating financial statements that accurately reflect the true financial performance of the enterprise. That's why that is so important. So it just
Right.
makes life so much. Yeah, of course, you'll save a few bucks on taxes. You'll cheat our uncle. I get it. I'm not with the IRS, but if selling the enterprise is going to be on your horizon, or maybe even going out and securing third party financing, it just makes so much sense just to do things the right way.
Yeah. And your background as a CPA probably really accentuates that point as well. Like case in point.
When I first started, I was, oh my God, I think I was getting chills looking at some of these financial statements. I was like, what happened here? Why? Oh, well, things didn't balance. Couldn't tie things from one statement to the other, and then I got, and then somebody said, "Austin, this is the way of the world with most small businesses." Now, occasionally we'll find some great ones. I'm working with a guy right now, and they said, the husband wife team, they've had the business for 28 years. They want to retire. Classic, ideal client. And I said, "Well, how often do you do your financials? Do you settle up at the end of the year to do your taxes, or do you do something on a quarterly or monthly basis?" "Oh, no, no, no. We run this thing, tip top. We do our financials quarterly. We don't run any personal items through here. We want clean statements." And I just said, "You are now my most favorite client."
A good example. And then the sale is probably a lot smoother and cleaner and
Exactly,
quicker.
right,
Yeah.
right. So they run it clean. They've got some very good financial results, and yeah. So when we get to that point when we take it to market, it's going to be some very very great conversations with potential buyers because there's no additional explanation that we need to do or need to have, right? And so
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm so
Forensic accounting.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So buyers, I mean, they'll go along with some of it, but I mean, but if you've got rows and rows and dozens of add backs or adjustments, and then people say it's just too many um,
Yeah.
to get somebody comfortable. Because I mean, you think
Right.
about it, buying and selling businesses for most of us is a once in a lifetime event.
Mm.
So we're trying to de-risk that as much as possible on both sides of the aisle. So, so when there's some things that are not that kosher as it relates to financials, people are just it's just easier for them to pull out.
Yeah. And what about number three? What's the third?
Number three, that's probably something that you will resonate with you, but I firmly believe that you have to be able to demonstrate that you have a highly effective and sustainable process approach to attracting net new clients and retaining the clients that we get. Um, Oftentimes, we work with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of small business owners over the years, and many people are just are afraid to sell for whatever reason. I get it. Selling sometimes can be a little challenging, rejection and that sort of thing. But if you don't have not created the ability to sell, and you're the owner, then how can you expect anybody else to sort of kind of pick it up on your behalf? Everybody thinks that if I hire a sales guy or gal, that'll fix all my problems. But such is not the case. Because if you can't demonstrate that you've got a product or service that people are passionate about and that you the owner can sell, then it's going to be very very hard to convince somebody else. And then of course then the other part is so it's attracting, and then we have the retention component. And so some of the retention component that also speaks to the business model that we've adapted. I mean, are we a one and done sort of business that they buy from us once and we don't see them for another 10 or 15 years? Or have we created a business model that we sell once and then people keep coming back for either sort of the next new model or for service or some other combination of things, because those are the businesses that people want to buy. There's this concept of recurring revenue. So if we can create a business and not all business can do this, I get it. But if we can create a business that has a recurring revenue component attached to it, that's going to be very, very, very attractive. And so, but since, and I tell you, this is a great place for you to install, or for an owner to install KPIs. So I like to use an example. I've had a couple of sellers who approach me, and what they'll say is, and I'll say, well, what do you do? General contractors is a good one, because a lot of general contractors, they're kind of a one person band, and they outsource or sub out all of the heavy lifting to subcontractors. And so I asked them, I said, well, what are you selling, or how do you attract clients, and then what are you selling? They said, well, I coordinate all these subs. And I said, well, do you have any evidence? And they said, yeah. They hold up their phone and said, they basically say, this is my CRM tool, customer relationship management tool. Everything that they say, we do business by word of mouth. I said, well, why would that excite a potential buyer? Because you want hundreds of thousands of dollars, and your new business or go-to-market mechanism is waiting for people to call you with a referral. Now, so what's the flip side of that? Putting systems in place. You and I've talked about this many times. Putting systems in place, tracking referrals. Client A, I started with him or her 5 years ago. At year 2, they gave me a referral. Year 3, they came back to me and had some additional work done, so on and so forth. So your ability to track that and being able to lay that out as, hey, here's what the customer journey looks like in my business, It may not be something that people are buying from you every month, but if you consider that over the course of 5 years, somebody spent $1,000 with me in year one, and through referrals and additional business, they've uh, another $10,000 that they spent with me, either directly or indirectly. We now know the lifetime value of that client. So these whatever 100 or 1,000 clients that the seller buyer is inheriting, now we can put a value on them. So it's those kinds of things. So yeah. So selling businesses, I believe. I mean, again, so many want to exit, but it's not for the faint of heart. We need to do some heavy lifting and some homework if we want to do it the correct way.
And at what point, how far in advance do you usually see, or would you recommend businesses who would want to sell approach you for getting ready to sell?
So in the business brokerage world, usually what happens is people show up on our doorstep and they want to get out. They just said, they said, I don't want to I don't want to invest another nickel in the business. I want out. And so we will go through the valuation process, and then a couple things happen. They'll say, wow, I was hoping that my business would be worth more, but I am so tired, or I'm just so motivated to get out. Let's go with that selling price. And then you have another group that says, well, I can't sell for that. That's not enough money to fund the retirement of my dreams. So what we do with them is then we say, well, okay, well, let's go back and identify a few things in your business that we can put some attention to, and if we fix that, we can pull ourselves out for better return. So in a perfect world, and we have probably 4 or 5% of the people say, let's do that, and then the ones that are doing, they stick to it. They have better selling prices. So, but you've got to be conscious that you got to have that conversation with somebody like myself 3 to 5 years prior to your target exit date.
Right.
As I told you, my hero is the guy that was a couple years into his business and says, "Hey, I know how I'm going to exit." So he could create a business model that got him to Google acquiring his business. But
Yeah.
most other businesses, probably 3 to 5, to begin to start thinking strongly about about exiting, and then it gives you some options, because there's a whole industry that has come up. We call the exit planning industry, and these
Hmm.
are certified professionals and other business coaches and that sort of thing that will come in and sort of work with sellers on their journey towards exiting. So they'll do an assessment. They'll look at sort of what the key value levers are of the particular business, and then they'll do which value lever will give them the most juice when it comes to valuing the business. So it's usually things around, and guess what? The three that I just mentioned, those are probably out of this 7, 10, 12 levers. Those are consistently the top three.
Yeah. I think most business owners would be surprised at what their businesses actually worth if they haven't done the homework, if they haven't been educated on these value points.
Right. That's correct. That's usually the first part of my conversation. I don't like to embarrass people, so I just say, hey. So we're having a conversation about what's involved in potentially selling the business. I said, well, hey, have you given any thought to what the business is worth? And then they'll have a number. And so I used to tell them that'll never work.
Yeah.
That's way too high. But what I say now, I said, well, hey, look, okay, I got you. So if your business is worth that, if you believe it's worth it, then that means you're probably, based on industry statistics and multiples and the things we use for our evaluation tools, that means that you're probably generating this, and I'll have a number. This means you're probably generating about $200,000 in cash flow. And then I let them come to the realization that they're overvaluing the business. And then they'll say, "Oh my God, I'm nowhere near that number. It's
Right.
more like 60 or 70,000." And so they do the quick math. They go, "Wow, maybe my business isn't as worth as much as it is." And then if they want to stick it out, maybe again default to making some enhancements, then I can either help them, I could flip them to somebody in my network who does exit planning for as a profession or some combination thereof. So those are very, very difficult conversations, unfortunately, because if you think about it, I just had this conversation yesterday. I told the potential sellers, I said, hey, look, um, you know, building a business is very much like raising children, right? We become very attached to them. They can do no wrong,
Right.
and um, and we can't see some of the things that are missing or that they do that don't make them great people. It's the same. It's the same with our businesses. And then we're shocked into reality when we go to sell, and it's worth nothing near what we put into it. And so
Yeah.
that's often a conversation that I have with sellers. They say, well, they'll have a price, I'll have a different opinion, and they say, and the common response is, well, Austin, you don't understand. You don't understand how much I put into this business.
Right, because it's an emotional investment.
Absolutely.
They're hugely emotionally invested.
And I'm empathetic. I am totally empathetic to that. But
Yeah.
and then I have to give them the bad news. I said, well, you know what?
Yeah.
People, nobody cares how much you put into it. What they want to know is how little do they have to spend to buy the business, how much they can get out of the business, and
Yeah.
how fast they can get it. They can get it out.
It's like, what's in it for them, not for
That's
you.
right. That's right. That's right. Because oftentimes, I mean, we do a pretty nice job of creating a nice marketing brochure, 20, sometimes 20, maybe even 30 pages of why this is a good opportunity. But the first thing that people do when we know it, they turn to the financials to see if it's worth their while to read further. Because if the financials don't tell the story, a good story, good enough story, then nothing else. Because so many investors or potential buyers, they're serial entrepreneurs, so they might have 3 or 4 businesses. So they're not going to buy another business that's at break even or losing money, so that now they've got to take time away from their other businesses and spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week trying to turn this thing around. The best we can hope for, and these are, again, difficult conversations as well, is that when we find businesses that are in that kind of shape, that they'll sell at some fraction of what the underlying assets are worth. So we call that an asset sale. So if you've got this
Yeah.
built out restaurant and you have made money in the last 2 or 3 years, you're looking at, and let's say you have $100,000 worth of equipment. So we're going to start probably around $40,000, $50,000 as a selling price, which is basically what's the fair market value of the equipment that you have in place. Very difficult conversation. Very difficult.
Very difficult. Yeah, it's probably very disappointing to a lot of
Yes,
business owners getting into it.
I got kicked out of a restaurant when I
Yeah.
So between what I thought her business was worth and what my fee was going to be, because people get the same level of service, whether it's $50,000 selling price or a $5 million selling price. We provide the same level of care and diligence in putting the package together. So when I kind of explained to her how we work, she said, "No, get out of here. No, I'm not talking to you anymore." And it was one of those deals. I could not be upset because I could see it coming. I could see it coming. You go into a restaurant, it's 12:30, and you say, okay, it's the lunch hour, right? This place should be jam packed. There was not a soul in that place right in the middle of the week, and so you kind of see this is probably not doing really, really well. So I didn't have to ask her about the financials. I just had to look around and see the dust on the tables and the lack of foot traffic in there. And so I just knew I was preparing myself for a very difficult conversation. So
Yeah. Well, and every business is so unique, and there are so many factors
that's correct.
involved when it comes to valuation. And I mean, I've done homework on my business, for example, in the past, and it's hard to even get a benchmark of what your business might be worth because, for one, you don't know the financials of all the other businesses in your area about the same size. People aren't going to disclose that information. And there are different ways to value a business, so it can get very confusing very quickly. So
No, I'm glad you mentioned that because we hear that a lot from sellers, and so there's a couple things that we can do to sort of help them get comfortable with the potential value of their business. And sometimes we will recommend them. We work with a valuation firm that will put a value on the business, and that's exactly what they do. They have access to certain databases that you probably do not have access to, where we can look at past transactions in your industry and how well people and what they sold for, get a little bit on some of the terms and conditions, that sort of thing. So it'll give you sort of a very educated approach to what the value of your business might be. Now, ultimately, it comes down to what is what is a willing buyer willing to pay, and what is a willing seller willing to sell
right.
it for.
Yeah.
But since some of this is capturing SBA loan information, so we have some really good data in these databases around what similar type businesses sell for. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would think service businesses are probably a lot different than businesses that sell tangible products and goods.
Different factors we look at, sure, in terms of things like cost of goods sold, of course, cost of goods sold, but inventory, and that sort of thing. Because oftentimes, if we're running into businesses that aren't well run, they'll have excess or obsolete inventory, and so that becomes a drag on earnings as well, or drag on valuation. So,
Yeah.
in a perfect world, you've got to have a strategy on how do you correct that problem before you sell, so it doesn't become a negative in terms of the valuation and ultimate selling price.
Well, Austin, I've taken a lot of your time. I really appreciate all of your time. Are there any last minute tips? I know we didn't get to a lot of our questions. This is it's probably a part two. This is such good information. But what would you leave business owners with? Any other advice or tips that you might leave us with today?
I'd say that the best way to exit a business and take advantage of this silver tsunami, because there's a lot of competition out there for businesses for sale. But the best way to exit at a top valuation is to consistently run a highly functioning business. So we talked about the three things, and then look for other opportunities to improve the business. So oftentimes we can't see it. So having maybe a board of advisors or a mentor, maybe even a coach that you work with that will help you to peek around the corner. So when I was doing a little bit more coaching, I refer to Bill Gates as the godfather of the business coaching industry, because he said it in many of his talks. He says, he believed that everybody needed a coach. Everybody needs somebody to hold them accountable to what they're working for, and somebody that could give them alternate points of view on the current thinking about the business and the way forward. So he was a strong believer in coaching. And then the guys that ran Google, they were quoted as saying something very, very, very similar, right? So as I said, God put 7 billion people on this planet. There's no expectation that you're supposed to know everything, and that you'll reach out to one of those 7 billion for some help, assistance, or guidance. So that would be my.
I agree so much, especially as a business owner, and a lot of times you're isolated at the top of your industry or business, and you don't have a lot of other peers that you're relating with or sharing information with, or overcoming struggles or challenges with on a regular basis.
Yes.
And so being involved in either a peer group or getting ongoing regular coaching really can help stretch and grow you and see things that you might not otherwise see, because you can't see the forest for the trees. You're too close to it. You're too emotionally involved or invested. And so a coach or a peer group can help you overcome those things that might hold you back.
Absolutely true. So I know you're familiar with the Goldman Sachs 10,000 program. So I've been working probably the last 4 or 5 years, a peer group, a mastermind, whatever you like to call it. But we've been meeting once a month for the last 4 or 5 years. They were all graduates of a Goldman Sachs cohort, and we collectively have been able to accomplish some great things. Over the course of that time, everybody there has grown their business substantially, acquired additional space, and are creating some wonderful enterprises. So it worked, and then totally unprompted, they come to the meetings and say, "I don't know where my business would be if it wasn't for the people in this room that offer me encouragement and give me alternate ways to think about the issues that I'm facing."
I love that. Yeah, I've grown so much myself being a part of a peer group in the past and receiving personal coaching. And I'm now specifically putting together peer groups for those in the industrial manufacturing B2B sectors and venturing into the more deeply into coaching myself. I've done consulting for many years.
Good.
It's just I receive so much value myself out of coaching that I've found myself gravitating to that, as well. And
That's
it's,
great.
yeah, just being able to contribute in that way it's powerful. Well, Austin, thank you so much. How can people get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more about selling their business?
Yeah, so the easiest way, I'll give you a couple of ways. My phone number is 281-814-3745. Again, 281-814-3745. And then my email address is really simple. It's atenette at tworld.com, ATENETTE at TWORLD.com. Transworld Business Advisors. Call the Houston office. That's another way to reach me as well.
Great. Well, thank you again, Austin. I've really enjoyed the conversation. So valuable and interesting.
Dr. Aguilar, it was a pleasure, and looking forward to collaborating in the near future with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.